Hey guys, welcome to the Cru High Show. I'm Daniel, and I'm here with my really good friend, Blake Wilberger, today. And Blake is a dear friend of mine, and he's a guy who I've been through a lot with. We've been friends for about 4 years now.
Roughly.
And he's a guy who I never really expected to be super close with, but God has a funny way of bringing people together who may have conflict at first and then really weaving their lives together. It's one of the ways God works. So today we're going to talk about Blake's journey over the last year or so. It's been a hard year for a lot of people, but with Blake, he's just kind of hit roadblock after roadblock, hard thing after hard thing, and he's had to really reckon with what does he believe, how does that impact how he lives, and what really matters in life. So we're going to touch on that today. So stay tuned if you want to know what matters in life, because Blake's got all the answers. No, we're all learning together, but he's going to have some good wisdom for us. So Blake, share a brief synopsis of your life up to this point. Who is Blake Wilberger?
I love that word, synopsis. Blake is a guy born and raised in Nebraska. Very emotionally driven. I'm a fun guy. I don't know how to describe myself, really. It's always weird having to describe yourself because generally when I get asked that question, I look to my mom or someone like you, and I'm like, they can articulate for me. I'm a very weird case of person.
Yeah, Blake's a guy who is really interesting. Like, you meet him at first, and
standoffish.
You might get a sense that he's standoffish and kind of cold, but then he gets to know you a little bit.
Yeah,
you're just like the warmest guy in the world, and really deeply love people.
Yeah. I remember after Cru one time, you had I don't know if it was a girl or guy came up to you, and they were asking you about me, and they said, he never smiles. And then you were saying, well, he's the weirdest guy I know. He's always laughing and joshing around. I'm like, that made me realize, like, man, I really don't smile much around people. That's when I really started to take notice of how I come off. It's like, man, I do come off kind of cold, but once you get to know me, I'm very, very weird. Yes. Smile a lot, laugh a lot. So
he's a lover of memes. Loves memes to death. Blake is a guy who I describe as an extremely deep thinker, a deep feeler, and that's an interesting combo. Most people major in one or the other, but Blake, you're really deep thinker and feeler, and that makes you really good conversationalist, and I think you really deep dive into whatever you're interested in, which is really cool. Like, you don't like to dabble in the surface waters very much. Yeah. You like to dive deep. And that's a really sweet thing, but it can cause you to really overthink things sometimes and really feel the weight of the suckiness of life, or something that's going wrong, or something that could go wrong in the future. Cause you to hold a lot of weight on yourself. And that, I think, it's been most manifested in this last year and a half for you, since we both graduated from college in December of 2019. And from that point on, it's kind of been a bit of a rocky year and a half for you. You picked out Psalm 13 as something that kind of described how you were feeling towards God this last year. How has that feeling changed across the year, and like what's still unresolved from that?
Yes, chapter 13. How long, Lord, will you continue to ignore me? How long will you pay no attention to me? How long must I worry and suffer in broad daylight? How long will my enemy gloat over me? Look at me, answer me, O Lord my God. Revive me, or else I will die. Then my enemy will say, I have defeated him. Then my foes will rejoice because I am shaken. But I trust in your faithfulness. May I rejoice because of your deliverance. I will sing praises to the Lord when he vindicates me. That first verse. How long, Lord, will you continue to ignore me? How long will you pay no attention to me? I mean, I've not met a Christian or a person that acknowledges the existence of God that hasn't felt that. And it's a tough battle to fight, because I'm not one to, I don't really put on a face. Like, I wear my emotions. And so when I was feeling distant, when I was feeling ignored, when I didn't feel anything, I wore it pretty heavily. And, there's, when I let those questions build up with God of, why this pain, why this struggle, why do people experience this? Knowing that all powerful, omnipresent, it's like, you can do this. So why not just do it? I'm thinking of it from a, my perspective as a person living in a broken world, looking through broken glass. It's, everyone can't help but feel like, there's so much pain that do you really listen? Do you just ignore us? Are you paying attention to any of our problems, small or large? Like, everyone goes through, I don't like this word, but everyone goes through seasons like that, where everyone goes through periods of time in their life like that. Yes, indeed. And as I look back over the last couple months of my relation with God, I look back of all the times like I felt ignored, or I felt that I didn't get paid attention to. You try to blame God, and God can take your anger. He's God, so he can take anything you throw at him. But I'm just trying to blame God for, everything. And I knew it was wrong. Like, I knew I had no right. There's been much more given to me than I can ever complain about the pain I have or what's taken away. And when you try to blame God, I think of it as, I have a right to this. I have a right to this feeling. I have a right to this point in my life. Like, it's like, you had no right to take this away from me. You had no right to change my situation, or allow change, because God doesn't cause pain, but sometimes he allows it to happen. Mm-hmm. Like with Job, like, he allowed pain in Job's life. And so you just wonder, and you feel like you have a right to your own comfort. And, the baseline of everything, we don't really have a right to anything. We've been given everything. That's a hard realization to come to. Because compared to some people I've met, I haven't been through much. And so I can only imagine, the pain and the strife that a lot of people go through. Because I look at my life and I look at, the people I've grown up with, like, I've been truly blessed. Right. It's, you really take it for granted until you get older and you see the rest of the world. And it's not that you're sheltered, but you think that everyone grows up the same way you do. Everyone thinks about things the same way you do. Everyone has the same parents, same relationships with their brothers and sisters. And you realize that everyone's carrying around their own burden and their own life experience. And so, but yeah, like, when I started to blame God, I started to think I had a right to this happiness, or they had a right to that happiness. And it's just a tough pill to swallow, to be like, at the end of the day, everything's been given. That took a while to, come to terms with, because I remember that thought back in, that's the first thing I thought in Kanakuk. I went through it with, the leaders there, and I thought that again in November. But, you don't want to, you need to blame something. You need to blame something. That's kind of that innate response. Mm. And you blame yourself, you blame others, you blame the situation, you blame God, you blame whatever you can, until you're willing to work through pain. Like, you can avoid it all you want. You can avoid it till the day you die, no matter what it is. But there's a point where you just got to face it and not get over it, but you got to work through it. You got to become a better person because of it.
I was talking with my wife's cousin's husband. Name's Jason, super wise dude. Hey, Jason, I love you if you're listening to this. And he was talking about, like, dealing with things. And, like, as a Christian person, like, you can either, like, put that face on and brush hard things under the rug your entire life, until the rug has a gigantic lump under it. And every time you walk through your living room, you trip over that stuff, because you just can't keep shoving it under the rug eventually and not have it come back to bite you. Mm. Or when that stuff comes up, you can, like, be willing to go to battle and, like, evaluate it for what it is, take ownership for what part is yours. Maybe you go to counseling for stuff that has happened to you. You go to God to deal with the things that you can't understand. And that's something that you've learned this year, is that, like, in the past, you've either, like, wallowed in things or you've tried to numb them. But now it's more of, like, an in-between where you're not ecstatic that you're going through bad things.
Yeah.
You're not in the dumps either. But you're just able to have a mature understanding that, yeah, this world has good and bad, but God has given me so much good that I can be joyful even through a hard season in my life.
That's I always wondered when I was going to mature out of some of the things that I did. I always wondered whether I'd be able to. A lot of doubt there, but
the jury was out for a while there, Blake.
Yeah. Yep. There was a lot of questions, but coming to that point where it's just like, the great things that happen in life, you look at that and you're like, it's awesome. That's worth celebrating. The bad things that happen, you look at them and you're like, you know what? Not everything's always going to be bad. Things do get better, and you work through things, because you can't avoid pain no matter how much you want to. You can choose not to work through things, but that's not a life worth living by any means, by any stretch of the word. But yeah, that's been a blessing over the last couple of months. Is I finally hit a point that I wondered how long. I didn't even expect to come to this point. Like God did a heart change that I wasn't expecting, and I just kind of came into it. I've not given God a lot of credit for what He's done over the last year and a half, because I've more so been frustrated and angry. And so to give God credit in an area that I knew He had changed me in was was in itself a big step for me, to acknowledge the good that God does. It's definitely a good healing point, and a good place to start is acknowledging what you have and the good that God is doing for you and the good that He's done, because you can't build, you can't grow, you can't learn to forgive and forgive yourself, especially until you can acknowledge the good. So,
I mean, there's a time in the New Testament, I can't remember where it is right now, but it's one of Paul's letters, and he says, give thanks at all times. A lot of times you're like, I'm not sure what I have to give thanks for right now. But I think that's some of those things that both of us, having lost people or been around people who've lost people recently, it's like you realize we have a ton to be thankful for every day. Even if it's just fresh air or some sunlight. Or the fact that I'm still breathing today. That can be like a gateway to really making it through. It's like being thankful when you don't feel like it.
And that's kind of the cool thing. I mean, we're 23, 24, we're still very young, and this is a very interesting time. We're developing a lot of different challenges, different life stages, and it's just cool to see how your perspective shifts, going through different phases of life, going through different experiences. You with getting married last year, and the development and maturity that you've had since being married to Emily. That's been, your perspective has entirely shifted because of the man that you needed to become and the man that you have became. It changes how you act, it changes how you do things, it changes things about your daily life. Me with going and leaving and chasing whatever I've been chasing and coming back and having resolution on all this stuff that I've been carrying for so long, your perspective changes entirely. And not to say that life won't get hard again and you won't have any of those struggles anymore, but you go about it differently. It's you're refining your process, you're refining yourself, you're refining how you think about things. And it doesn't always become easier when you get to a hard spot in life, a rough point, but you have a lot more to fall back on, and how God has changed your vision with what your life is. So
yeah, totally. So Blake, what did you do this last year and a half? Kind of what were the different stops you had along the way, and how did you feel towards God as you went through each of those stops?
Yeah, graduating, I mean, both graduating in December, you're kind of looking for the next step. You're kind of looking for where am I going to fit in? What am I going to do? Ended up taking a job with a chicken company out in Waverly.
Bark, bark.
And, I got into that working in a closet with 3 different people.
Ouch.
It was kind of disheartening. Not the people themselves, but the job, the environment, my expectations coming out of college, they weren't what I had anticipated. And so I'm trying to think with God, is this going to be it for the next however many years, just working and kind of feeling invaluable? And so feeling that, I was kind of looking for my next step, because there had to be more. There's this feeling of like FOMO.
Fear of missing out.
Yeah. Grass is greener. The grass is greener elsewhere kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And that's something that I chased. I couldn't really get away from it. And so there was a program my uncle had introduced me called the Fellows. They had a bunch of different spots across the country. And, I felt at the time, I thought I'd felt led to go to California. I thought that's where I'd have the most success, whatever I was doing.
Because you wanted to do ministry.
I wanted to do ministry.
You wanted to pour out like how you'd been poured into in your faith.
Yeah, I mean, I had so many different people invest in me over the last 3 to 4 years that it didn't feel like an obligation, but it just felt like an outpouring of I've had this so much. I can help other people that have gone through different walks of life, different experiences.
Right.
And I wanted to give that back. Once you've been discipled, the initial response is, I want to disciple others. I want to help others, walk through life. And I wanted to gain that ministry experience. But the original plan was going to Juneau, which was curtailed, obviously, by COVID. And a little bit of frustration with God there, because I had this master plan of, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have these big steps in Juneau. I'm going to work with all these awesome people. I'm going to help, whatever life stages and life issues that these, 6, 7 kids are going through. I'm going to be able to walk them through it. I'm going to be, kind of like gives you an all-star feeling of I was able to help out these people's lives.
Yeah, because he was going to go on a summer mission with Cru and be part of the staff team.
Yep.
Help disciple a few college students up in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
But that did not happen due to COVID.
Yeah. A lot of people's plans got changed. You just got to adapt.
Included.
Yeah. And so I knew back in March that I was going out to Los Angeles. So that time in between.
You were going to leave in September, right?
September 2nd or 3rd.
So you had a few months to
kind of
do whatever.
And it's just, I ended up quitting my job in May. I wanted a different change of pace. The job wasn't really what I anticipated. The work was different. It was a great experience, to say the least. It kind of gave me that initial shock of, graduating. But one of the things that I'd always, I couldn't get away from being in San Diego was how I felt God through nature, and I was just looking at things, what can only God create that no man could, man could design, could engineer, could build, that would even replicate, something as awe-inspiring as something God could create. And, that initial answer is, nature. There's so many, my first response is space, but I can't go into space.
Not yet.
Not
Maybe
yet.
Elon Musk will get us there pretty soon.
I signed up for that NASA thing. Take the ticket to the Mars.
You just have to eat astronaut ice cream every day, and then you can go. Is that how it works?
I'm not really sure. I think it was just you had to sign a waiver that said, I'm okay with going.
Vacuum seal me.
Vacuum seal me in a.
Yeah. Okay, so you had a desire to go into nature.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of get that. It was almost a rush of I'm looking at. There's no filter between me and God here. There's what He created, and I'm in it. And I got that first sitting on the beach in California. It's just awe-inspiring, looking out over the ocean. And like the culmination of that summer was going to Idaho. One of the best hikes I've ever been on. I think I ever will be on. Went with my dad, and we got to the pinnacle, and there's this lake, kind of like a Narnia kind of looking scenario. Ooh, and went down in there, hiked probably for another 10, 15 minutes, and then got to a spot where I was able to hammock between two trees, ice cold water running beneath me. And it was weird. It was like 70, 80 degrees. I was in shorts and a t-shirt, and yeah, everything was like frozen around me kind of still. So to look out over the lake, it's still a little frozen. There's frozen waterfall kind of in this bowl of just unbelievable scenery. And in that moment when you're looking, where you just know that you're looking at an unfiltered, God-created thing, that's a rush that's a feeling that you can't replicate. So
I feel pretty close to God there because you're in His creation. You see, like, wow, He's good. He's creative. Mm-hmm. He's blessed me to be able to be here with my dad.
You appreciate the experience. You appreciate what God has created not only for you but for everybody. And for me, there's no better feeling than going into that unfiltered. And then the rest of that summer was just a lot of nature, a lot of experience. I still felt God calling me to, be in discipleship ministry in some capacity. I had to get that in somewhere. Ended up going to Kanakuk, which was a camp down in Missouri, kind of like a lot of you might have heard Pine Cove in Texas. That was an awesome experience, getting to work with kids in and out. Mm-hmm. Each week, a kid that in my group had accepted Christ, which was awesome. That third week was especially special. On a Friday, I got a call about my friend who had passed. A lot of anger, a lot of frustration. Do I stay? Do I leave and go to the funeral? Or do I choose to be here, invest in these kids, and then deal with it when I get out of camp? And so I chose to stay, questioning that decision most days. Mm-hmm. Working through the pain with God of losing someone. It's not a fun thing. It's not something you expect to do. Yeah. It just kind of happens. And it's a battle, but there are things that God allows that make, the pain is never something you want to experience, but God gives you like nuggets of goodness, of hope that make you realize He's still there. For me, that kid was Reese. Was a fun little kid. He very unique guy, quiet, well spoken, well thought out for his age, and he ended up accepting Christ on Thursday night. And we have a bell on the Kanakuk campus where you ring it if you want to let people know, what you just did, like the biggest decision you can make. Didn't want to ring it then. My co-counselor and I, we talked him through it, and he wanted to ring it that next morning. And that feeling of seeing that person acknowledge the step they had taken, that's also one of the most rewarding experiences. Way above nature and creation for me is, that kid, he's now getting to experience, heaven, like the glory of it. So it's kind of an awe-inspiring thing that happens every week. There's kids that do that, and it's
so rewarding.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. Like being an adult looking at it, it's like, man, it's just an awesome time. And so
then what was next?
Next
that was done.
Yeah, coming back with the accepting Christ, or coming back from Kanakuk?
Coming back from Kanakuk.
Okay. Coming back from Kanakuk, I had about 2 weeks before I went off to California, and just took some time with my parents. I was leaving them, I was leaving friends, and I wanted to spend time with them because I wasn't the most available person in college. I was, kind of closed off. A lot of time spent to myself, so I wanted to give. It was only a 2-week period, very short time, but I wanted to spend time with people who I'd missed the most. I got coronavirus, and my grandma had passed a couple of days before I had to leave.
That's hard.
yeah, carrying a lot of burden, not just in that past, couple weeks, but over the last 5 years that had just accumulated into this giant bag behind me that I was just lugging around, wherever I went.
So you came into the ministry with the fellows in
Yeah.
California, but you were just carrying all this weight.
Yeah.
So you came in not really being able to truly minister.
Mm-hmm.
You were just kind of
There's being even in discipleship. Like I wasn't able to be poured into. I was filled with so many other thoughts, worries, ideas, stuff I hadn't dealt with before, and it was the perfect storm to create a bad situation. And I only stayed in California for 2 months because it wasn't fair to, my situation and my health and my, what I needed to do to stay there. And it wasn't fair to the rest of the people that had chosen to be there for 9 months in like this discipleship and ministry program. And ended up going to Arizona, and the whole time just wondering what my purpose was, what God was doing with me.
Yeah.
Because transition, change, trial, for me, it's all questions of like, why am I doing this? What is this leading to?
Yeah.
Does this have a purpose, or am I just, going through things for the sake of going through them? So I ended up landing in Arizona for, a couple weeks, trying to figure out my next steps. And you kind of feel like, sometimes God leaves you out in limbo with what you're doing, with where your life's going, because you want it, and you personally, you want it all planned out. You want to see where you're going. You want to see why you're doing it. It's just those answers that we don't get those answers. That's kind of a battle that, I fight fairly often. It's like, what in the world is God doing with me?
I hear some frustration there. It's like during that time in Arizona, you felt like frustrated that God wouldn't show you what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, He wouldn't show me what value I had, what purpose I had. Why do people have these different experiences? What did they lead to? It just created more questions than it had answered to that point. And being in Arizona was awesome because I was able to let those questions kind of sit with me. Even though I was closed off a little bit, they were always there. I was always looking at them, just thinking, okay, what is going on here? A lot of frustration built up, a lot of, I would say, anger. And I didn't know how to answer any of those questions. I had people in Arizona, but I was still emotionally alone. And that's different. That's a different type of feeling, because you can have people around you. You can, choose to put out a happy face. But if you feel like soulfully alone or emotionally alone, it's a hard thing to live with. And I wear my emotions on my face. And so with that frustration with God, those questions, that anger, you begin to wonder, where am I going to go with this? And yeah, coming back, I knew that whatever relief or rest I needed was back here around the friends, the family, the kind of life I had built here.
That place where you could be like really at home.
Yeah.
Like
where you could feel yourself.
Physically at home, spiritually at home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You needed that.
Because you want to feel like you can be you as much as you can be.
Yeah. And
if you're in a place where you can't really do that, where you're restricted by some way, you want to get to that place where you're most vulnerable, because that's where you can work through a lot of things. It's like, okay, I got to come home. I gotta hash this out with God and myself to the best that I can, and figure out, what's going on. What am I going to do with my life? I'm a little over a year out of college at this point, and I'm working through that process.
Yeah.
But, the first time I came back, that first month and a half, I really realized that with God, I can blame Him all I want for whatever troubles I have in my life. And, compared to a lot of people, I don't have many. And you can blame all you want, but blaming is just, avoiding the issue, avoiding the growth. Because at some point you're going to run out of things to blame. Like, you're going to run out of people to blame. You're going to just run out of...
You're going to burn all your bridges.
Yeah, you're going to burn all your bridges. Yeah. And it's not a road that you want to go down very far. Like, everyone's going to go through those processes of, I blame this for happening. Like, I blame myself. I blame God. My experience, you got to correct that as soon as you can, because that's just a road that leads to more anger. It leads to more, I'm the victim. And playing the victim in your own story is just, it's not fruitful. And it's not, it doesn't build you up at all. It doesn't mature you. It just lets you sit in the same spot. It lets you sit in like melancholic feelings.
Sad feelings.
Sad feelings.
And look up melancholic. I don't know if that's a word even.
I think it is.
Melancholy-ish.
Melancholy-ish.
Melancholocious.
Melancholocious feelings. Mellow mushroom feelings. And it's just, you want to engage in behaviors that are going to help you move forward. Because staying stuck is not, I mean, as a Christian or as a person, as a man, you don't want to stay stuck, because it's not a good situation to be in for yourself, for people around you. You want to move forward. You want to work through the pain. You want to work through different, troubles with God. Because there's value in sitting in silence with God and kind of, resting. I don't know if that's a good word to use. Resting in your sadness. But to stay stuck there, to get caught up in that feeling all the time, and to choose not to move forward, you're not gonna grow. You're not gonna work through, and you're gonna miss out on a lot of life, a lot of the joy that God has for you.
That's really interesting that you're to say that to move forward for you meant to come home and to like limit how many relationships you were with, like to just kind of your parents, few close friends, your niece and nephew, your siblings.
Yeah.
It's like, that sounds a lot of times like, oh, I'm staying stagnant.
Yeah.
But like for you, that meant like, no, this is a place where I can really work through heart level stuff I need to.
Yeah.
Like I need to be home to do it.
I'd chosen to leave. Like I knew what I was leaving, because I thought there was something different, something better, something else I could chase. And, you get out, there's a lot of amazing things in the world, but I was disappointed because I'd realized the things I had left were the best things that have ever happened to me. Like my family, my friends, the feeling of being loved and valued. Like you can't go and create that somewhere else. Like it's a very hard thing to recreate. And I wanted to come back where I could be, the most me. And that was a big shift, because for so long I had this idea that I was going to leave and that God would have something better for me. But
find yourself on the open road.
Yeah, find myself on the open road. I've been on the open road a lot. And the most exciting trip I've had was the trip back from Phoenix to Lincoln this last time, because I'd finally come to a place with my relationship with God, with my relationship with myself, where you get tired of running. Like you can run all you want. I've ran a lot over the last 5 years, but you just get to a point where you're just kind of done with it. And you want to choose happiness. You want to choose growth. You want to choose to build a relationship with God. Because one thing that struck me, that my mom said, a couple weeks ago was, she said, God, like he doesn't force us to do anything. He just loves us a lot. And what you'll find is that he asks you to love him. He asks you to love others. He asks you to live, abiding in him. He doesn't force you. It's a choice. That's the cool thing about it. And when, I just kind of said that over and over to myself, like, it's simple things. Like God's asking me to do, like he's asking me to read my Bible. He's asking me to like partake in him. He's asking me to love people that don't necessarily love me back. He's asking me to do X, Y, and Z in my life. And when I started saying the words, he's asking me, that made the relationship perspective change a lot, because I didn't feel like I was, adhering to some authoritarian. I didn't feel like I was, just following blindly in footsteps. Like it's truly a awesome relationship when you can say to yourself, he's asking me to do simple things. And you feel a lot more loved, because it does feel like that relationship, because he truly is asking us to be, to go on a journey with him.
Yeah. It goes from, I have to do this to I get to do this.
Yeah, I get to do it. Yeah, the joy that you feel doing simple tasks, the joy that you feel working through, troubles, relationship, life, transition, like there's a lot of joy that you can find in it. Now, it's not always going to be, hugs and kisses when you have bad things happen in life, but there's a different perspective when you go through it with God, and
totally,
you get the feeling of like he's just asking me to be a part of this relationship. So that's been the last month and a half ish. I've been back for a couple weeks now, but that realization of, God, I just want to be in a relationship with God, and it doesn't feel like a chore. It feels like a battle sometimes, but that's being a sinful person. That's kind of the choice that you make.
It will be a battle until Jesus comes back.
Yeah.
Then there'll be one last battle.
It'll be a cool battle.
The battles are done forever at that point.
Yeah. If we have movies at that point, they should make a movie about it.
Yeah. Okay. To wrap up, guys, I'm going to read the words of Jesus from Matthew 13, verse 24 through 30. I think this ties into some of Blake's story. It's called the parable of the weeds. He put another parable before them, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field, but while his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared also. And the servants of the master of the house came and said to him, 'Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds?' He said to them, 'An enemy has done this.' So the servant said to him, 'Then do you want us to go and gather them?' He said, 'No, lest in gathering the weeds you root up the wheat along with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and at harvest time I will tell the reapers, gather the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn.'" So Jesus is saying here, hey, in this world, he is sowing good things for us. He is making a family here on earth of brothers, of sisters who have allegiance to him, but that there's also an enemy working against us who wants bad things for us, who has evil plans for this world. And the options that God has is to either leave good and evil here together now and let it mature until the day when he's ready to end evil for good, or he could destroy evil right now. But the thing is, we all have evil inside of us, and so he's giving us time to follow him, to enter into his will, to accept forgiveness for our sins, so that when he destroys evil, he doesn't destroy us too. And Blake's learned to live with that tension of good and evil coexisting, and trusting God through that. And that's a big part of maturity in our Christian walks. As you guys go through last weeks of school and into your summer, be thankful to our Lord and our Savior as you experience good and bad things, because they'll both come. But know that when you trust in the Lord, when you trust in God, you can have firm footing through whatever comes. And we get to invite other people into that relationship. And so with these last few days of school that you have, take a risk and love someone in your school. Be kind to them. Ask them to hang out this summer. Ask them what they love about life. Give them a shoulder to cry on if need be. Just be there for the people around you. Yeah, because when we know who we are, when God has revealed to us what it really means to love people and to be loved, that's when life really starts to have meaning. And we find that our purpose has all along been to love God and love people. Mm-hmm. So, go forth with that word. And just open your eyes to what is God asking you to do right now. Because that will show you what you need to do tomorrow, what you need to do the next day. And that will make you into the person that God wants you to be one day. Thank you for listening, guys. Have a great day. Peace.